Ben Hodges served as the commanding general at the United States Army Europe. He's an expert on Ukraine and a regular on DW. Ben, thanks for making time.
Thank you for the privilege.
How serious do you consider President Putin's latest kind of threat to use nuclear weapons if attacked, even with conventional forces?
No more serious than any of the previous red lines that he has issued for the last years. But he sees how we overreact to these things. And so whenever he wants to make a point or to derail efforts by the United States or Germany or others to move closer to providing Ukraine what it needs, he'll trot out something like this, where I've changed the doctrine. But I think that does not change anything about the likelihood that they would actually use a nuclear weapon.
Even if Ukraine would use long-ranging missiles, you don't think that this might trigger Vladimir Putin?
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And I don't mean from an American kind of logic or European logic. I mean of any kind of logic, because there's no benefit for Russia to do this. And I mean, look, they're hitting ammunition storage sites hundreds of kilometers inside of Russia, and Russia's not done anything. So I just think it's for them, they see that it works, that the current U.S. administration and the German government both stop short of doing what needs to be done just because of these threats.
President Zelenskyy is here in the United States to kind of promote his victory plan. Ben, maybe you can explain a little bit what the main steps are and if you think that this really could lead to a victory.
Well, the key to victory would be the U.S. government and the German government both saying that it is in the strategic interest of the United States and Germany that Ukraine successfully defends all of its sovereign territory and pushes Russia back to the 1991 borders. That would be the key to victory, because then that would open up the possibilities for policies that would provide Ukraine what it actually needs, instead of this nonsense about we're with you for as long as it takes, because nobody believes that anyway. I was encouraged that President Biden yesterday used the words to help Ukraine win. So that's progress. But he still stopped short of providing what's actually needed. And I think Ukraine has been very clear about what they need. And I think it's important that they also make it clear that not only does Russia have no real interest in any sort of meaningful negotiations right now, Ukraine doesn't have interest in those kinds of negotiations. Why should they give away Crimea or the eastern part of their country? There's no benefit to Ukraine if they do that.
So what good is this victory plan then, Ben?
Even though the U.S. government has failed to clearly identify what our strategic objective should be, Ukrainians have laid out, I think, a plausible way ahead for what's needed, what's required. And of course, the plan is not just asking the West for stuff. It lays out an approach, or it makes clear that Ukraine knows that Russia is not unbeatable, that somehow Russian victory is not inevitable.
But time is running out. We have been talking about that quite a bit. I mean, President Biden has only a couple of months left in the office. So maybe you want to talk a little bit how you view Zelenskyy's recent actions impacting his relationship with a potential successor, Donald Trump. I'm sure you saw that he met with a Democratic governor at a munition factory in a very important swing state. And then he was very critical with Trump's VP pick in an interview. Is this really smart?
Look, President Zelenskyy is responsible for the security of his country, trying to save the life of his country. And I think he is doing exactly what needs to be done. You remember Churchill came to Washington, D.C. and spoke to the U.S. Congress to encourage the United States to help join the conflict against Nazi Germany. And we've had Donald Trump hosting Viktor Orban and Bibi Netanyahu down at Mar-a-Lago. So this is this is nonsense coming from the Republican side, criticizing, talking about opening an investigation. This is absolute nonsense. What the visit of Zelensky did to the ammunition plant in Pennsylvania is remind Americans that helping Ukraine, this is not charity. This is about jobs for Americans. I mean, this is ammunition being produced in the United States. And you'll remember Senator Vance on one of the many stupid things he said a while back is that America does not have the industrial capacity to compete with Russia. I can't imagine a guy from Ohio would say that America does not have industrial capacity. And of course, President Zelensky shows that, yes, of course, we have industrial capacity.
Trump has accused Zelensky, however, of refusing to make a deal and questions Ukraine's ability to win this war. How do you respond to these sentiments?
The former president has revealed he has zero understanding of war. He has zero understanding of what it means to try and defend your country. He also has a really poor knowledge of history. He conveniently left out all the times the other day when he was speaking how Russia won this war, they won this war, and he skipped over all the parts where Russia lost wars. And then I was just watching it again where he says Ukraine has lost the war. They're not even a country anymore. What does he base that on? I mean, after 10 and a half years, Russia controls only 18% of Ukraine at the cost of 500,000 of their own soldiers killed and wounded and all the other things we already know about. So to say that Ukraine has lost is absolute nonsense. Now, if the U.S. and Germany don't do more to help Ukraine, then this could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the idea that somehow Ukraine has already lost, I mean, I was astounded listening to Trump go down what clearly are Kremlin talking points almost verbatim. So I put zero credibility into what he's saying.
What happens if he comes back to the White House? He's promising that he will end this war on day one. Will Vladimir Putin be his first guest of honor?
I think, of course, the former president has made hundreds of promises that are unfulfilled, and I don't think he has any intention of doing that. And by the way, the kind of deal he has in mind, of course, would go right over the heads of the Ukrainians, just as he did in Afghanistan, where he made a deal directly with the Taliban without involving the Afghan government or all of our allies like Germany who were with us in Afghanistan. And so I think the Ukrainians are not going to just sit back and accept whatever President Trump and President Putin might agree. And frankly, I think most of at least Eastern Europe will not accept it either because they know what that means. And frankly, Germany will be the biggest loser because there will be millions more Ukrainian refugees heading west into Central and Western Europe. And so I think that all of our European allies would be wise to discourage Trump from trying to come up with some sort of agreement with Vladimir Putin.
President Biden is flying to Germany for negotiations. What is to be expected there?
The information about this has been very, very sparse. And so I think this is one where the less we know going into it, the better. The key, though, will be, Ukraine. 2.5 years ago, we talked about nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important rule to stick to.
Ben, at the recent UN week, there were also alternative proposals discussed, including those from China, Brazil, Indonesia, and some African states. What do you make of or think of their calls for a ceasefire along current front lines in Ukraine?
Almost all the countries you just named are beneficiaries of some sort from Russia or have those kind of relationships. And so, of course, Russia is trying to get as many countries as possible to agree to put pressure on freezing the situation as it is now. And of course, Russia's idea of peace is through their imperialistic lens where they gain control of other sovereign countries, which is, of course, exactly the opposite of what the UN Charter says. So I think that nations should reject any sort of peace plan proposed by Russia or anybody else that allows them to keep parts of a sovereign nation because it won't stop there.
The focus is shifting from Ukraine to the Middle East, to this horrible developments over the last days and weeks and months, if you wish. What implications do you think will this have for the kind of Western-backed Ukrainian proposal for a global peace summit?
Iran, of course, is behind Hezbollah. That Hezbollah is their main proxy. Iran does provide some support to Hamas and to the Houthis. Um, Iran's only friend, though, is Russia. And so I think if we look at all of these trouble spots, Russia and Ukraine, Iran and their proxies fighting against Israel in different places, North Korea and China, if we think of them all as different parts of one strategic whole, it kind of helps put in perspective the importance of having strong alliances, strong relationships, significant amounts of military capability, and political will. And if you help Ukraine defeat Russia first, then Iran is left without any actual friend. And I think so defeating Russia could help isolate Iran, which would help take some of the pressure off in that region, perhaps. Now, I am pretty sure Iran does not want to get into a conflict with Israel. I also think that Hezbollah does not really want to get into a full-scale war with Israel because of the losses they would suffer. The part that I don't know, I can't tell what's driving Israel. Obviously, we know that the war in Gaza is a result of October 7th attack last year. But when I think about why Israel is doing what it's doing against Hezbollah, it seems to me that it's preemptive because they thought maybe Hezbollah was getting ready to come in and attack to help take pressure off of Hamas. But I'm not convinced it was just preemptive. I think, Netanyahu's popularity is back up very high. They seem to have the ability to keep fighting for quite some time. It's clear that the Netanyahu government has zero interest in a two-state solution, certainly not anytime soon. So this creates a challenge for the United States and for Europe on how to address Israel, to continue to support Israel's existence. But the way Israel goes about what it's doing, I also don't think it makes it very difficult for all of us to continue to support them with a blank check, basically.
Do you think there will be any red line from the United States at some point?
I don't see that. Of course, we don't know what conversations and discussions have taken place in a classified or private setting. I wouldn't know that, and I'm not entitled to know that. But I do remember a few months ago when President Biden started reducing or talked about reducing ammunition for Israel to put pressure on them, there was an enormous negative reaction inside the United States. So we have a domestic challenge with that as well. I don't know that if it's a Harris administration, that she would be very different from a Biden administration. The Congress will have something to say about all this as well. So it's hard to predict which way this goes.
But many parts of the world have the feeling that the United States doesn't have any influence anymore on the Netanyahu government or on Netanyahu himself.
Yeah, it sure looks that way. I mean, and the fact that Netanyahu now apparently is backing away from a ceasefire that France and the United States have been working on with the Israelis, and now Netanyahu's backed away from it. So I don't know the rest of the story on that. I don't know that yet.
So do you think Netanyahu is basically doing what he wants to do right now?
I think that's exactly what he's doing, what he wants. Of course, now that his popularity is back up, nobody talks about the hostages anymore, or you don't have the riot or big demonstrations that you used to, even though there's still, I think the number is 97 that were taken back on October the 7th, plus 4 others. So a total of 101 hostages, some of which may already be dead. But that's not in the front of the news anymore.
Ben Hodges, thank you very much, and I'm sure we will talk soon.
Thank you very much for the privilege.